everyone, and they're full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Vanchikalpa Tiruvascha No Evacha. Okay, just one, not two. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Opirana Balaba Kirivardhati Opi Janabalaba Kirivardhati Yasodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachare Yamana Tera Panachare Jayo Radhu Madhuva Kunja Vihare Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunda Vihari Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari Yasudhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasudhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Punatera Vanachare Yamana Tera Vanachare Jayo Radha Madhuva Kunda Vihari Jayo Radha Madhuva Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also tell us that Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Friends, say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadha, Sri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath, Sayam Kunda, Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari 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 Bol. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namaham Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Prasthaya Budle. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste. Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nivasesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarni. So today we're reading from the 10th canto, 37th chapter, text 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Asatam Nishamya Vimuko Mukena Kong Piban Ivabhyadravad Ati Amarshanaha Jagana Tadvyam Aravinda Lochanam Adhurasadash Chanda Javo Durachiyaha Satam Nisamya Vimuko Mukena Kam Mukena Tam Piban Ivabhyadravat At Yamarshana Jagana Pabhyam Aravinda Lochanam Durashalas Chanda Jabo Durachyaha Satam Nisamya Vimuko Mukena Kang Vibani Vabhya Dravadachya Marshanaha Jagana Padvyam Aravinda Lochanam Durasadas Chanda Javo Durachyaha Satam Nishamya Vimuko Mukena Bakam Vibani Vabhya Dravadachya Marshanaha Jaganapadvyam Aravinda Lochanam Durashadas Channa Javo Durachyaha Anyone else? Nope. Saha, he, Keshi. Tam, him, Krishna. Nishamya, seen. Abhimukaha, in front of himself. Mukena, with his mouth. Calm, the sky. Piban, drinking up. Eva, as if. Avyadravat, ran forward. Ati amarshanaha, very angry. Jagana, he attacked. Padbhyam, with his two legs. Aravinda lochanam, the lotus-eyed Lord. Durasata, unapproachable. Chanda, fierce. Javaha, whose speed. Durachyaha, unconquerable. So, translation. Seeing the Lord standing before him, Keshi ran toward him in extreme rage, his mouth gaping as if to swallow up the sky. Rushing with furious speed, the unconquerable and unapproachable horse demon tried to strike the lotus-eyed Lord with his two front legs. So you can repeat. Seeing the Lord standing before him, Keshi ran toward him in extreme rage, his mouth gaping as if to swallow up the sky, rushing with furious speed. The unconquerable and unapproachable horse, demon, tried to strike the lotus-eyed Lord with his two front legs. So there's no purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, so I'll speak a few words. So first, Satam nisamya vimukho mukhena kam piban nivabhya dravadatya marshana jagana patyam aravinda lokshanam Durasadas chanda javo durachyaha. So omagana timiranda sha gananjana shalakaya chakshur and meditam yena tasmai shikadavena maha. So one thing we're going to talk about, perhaps the only topic we're going to talk about today, is something that's mentioned here, ati amarshanaha, which basically means extremely or very angry. So we're going to talk about anger today. Because as we're aware, there's three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. So it's interesting, lust, anger, and greed. Lust means that I basically want to use someone for satisfying my senses. And of course, what is commonly called L-O-V-E, sannyasi is not allowed to say that word, but what is commonly called love is actually lust in this material world, where we see someone as an object rather than a subject. You understand? And of course, lust, and then greed means we just want to possess something. And of course, lust and greed can be there at the same time, basically. You can lust to try to enjoy someone, you greedy want to possess them. So let's talk about anger. And I took a lot of quotes from the Bhagavad Gita. For those of you who don't know what the Bhagavad Gita is, it's spoken by Krishna a little over 5,000 years ago to Arjuna. And anger is dealt with quite a bit in the Bhagavad Gita. And there's one particular verse we're going to start with that really describes what's happening here with this particular demon. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and the bodies of others, and blasphemes against the real religion. So, of course, that's in the chapter Divine and Demoniac Nature, chapter 16. Bhagavad Gita, I believe it's the 18th text. So these are the factors that sort of like lead up to us, or it's us, us too, when we're in Maya, to people getting angry. False ego. What is false ego? False ego means I and mine. And there's a real conception in the spiritual world of ego, of self. The Mayavadis say you have to get rid of conceptions of self. But the real conception of self is what? I am Jivara Swarupahoy Nitya Krishna Das. And actually, even on a higher level, is Krishna belongs to me, right? First we start, of course, don't go to that level right now. I belong to Krishna, I'm Krishna's property. Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatvam shantim richati. In the 5th chapter of the Gita, Prabhupada gives this as the peace formula. Prabhupada gave several classes utilizing this particular verse to illustrate what he called the peace formula. So this peace formula is the opposite of false ego. False ego is I and mine. Ishwaroham. Aham bogi. What? Siddhoham. Balavan sukhi. That's the, as I've often said before, that's the demon's Gayatri mantra. Ishwaroham. I am the controller, Just like it's described here, bewildered by strength. So this demon, he's strong. Keshi demon is not just a weak 98-pound, or 96, whatever, pound weakling horse. He's strong, so he's bewildered. Ishwara, and he thinks, I am powerful. Ishwara ham. Aham bogi. And, there must be some desire to be the enjoyer. I'm going to enjoy killing Krishna. Siddhoham. I'm perfect. Balavan, I am very powerful, again. And Sukhi, I'm happy. So, actually, these factors, when we think like that, they actually stimulate our anger. When I think, I'm powerful, I'm the controller. Sometimes, even in my service, sometimes I'm thinking, I'm the controller. Why don't people listen to me? And I just get angry, isn't it? Ishwaraham aham bhavi, siddhoham balavan sukhi. So the opposite of that is bhoktaram jagatapasam. That, Krishna is what? The enjoyer. He's the bogi. Sometimes in the early days of the movement, the devotees would call each other bogies, isn't it? Because they were enjoying, so God forbid someone would get married, we say they're just bogies. They probably would often talk about bogi, yogi, and rogi. Anyway. Prabhupada said, anyway, I'm not going to, anyway, bogi goes to the restroom, twice a day, a yogi once a day, and a rogi more than that. Rogi means sick. So anyway, say, Bhoktaram jagatapasam. I am the I'm the enjoyer, the object of austerity and sacrifices. Sarva loka maheshwaram, Ishvara. I'm the Ishvara of all the worlds. Sarva loka maheshwaram. Suridam sarva bhutanam. I'm the well-wisher of all living entities. Gyatva mam shanti mrichati. Of course, then the word shanti is there. In this way, one can actually be shanti and conquer anger if one realizes that. You know, one keeps thinking one's the controller, it's just anger becomes manifest. So anyway, this is the demoniac mentality where one is bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger. And generally when we're talking about anger, we refer to this famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter, I believe 62 and 63, isn't it? Jayato vishayak pumsam sangostesha bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama. Kama krodha vijayate. What does that mean? That first there's, let's say, a contemplation of some sense object. Not only sense object, you know, there's subtle thoughts too that we contemplate, like Ishvara hamaham bhogi, I'm the controller. It may not be a particular gross sense object right there. Jayato vishik pumsam. This person contemplates something or concept, subtle concept or gross object. Jayato vishik pumsam sangos teshu bhajayate. And then the more you contemplate it, then what is it? Thinking, feeling, willing, the three stages that occur. Then you get attached to it, right? Isn't that what happens? So therefore, someone who's intelligent is like the proverbial tortoise. The proverbial tortoise mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita is that someone who understands, you know, if I contemplate this particular sense object, you know, for, it may be like the opposite sex or the same sex nowadays, or it may be a car. You know, you contemplate a particular, oh, I really have to have that car. Then you get attached to it. So a devotee understands, pull the senses back. You know, don't think you can deal with this. That's why it's generally recommended that people not be alone with a member of the opposite sex. Of course, nowadays, you know, who knows? Alone with your cat or dog or something like that. Because Balavan Indriya Grama, Vidvan Eva Hi Karshati. You've all heard that statement before? Because the senses are what? Balavan. Just like you have the word Bhagavan, that means Krishna, full of opulence. So the senses are powerful, are full of power. Wow, isn't it interesting? Balavan, Indriyo Grama, Vidvani Vikarshati. So someone, even if someone is extremely intelligent and determined, I'm just like Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni, poor guy. He was just trying to be a Brahma Rishi, and he was meditating, and Indra, of course, sends Menaka. He's just meditating, trying to, you know, just engage in austerities. And then what happens? Immediately, he just forgets about it, Balavan Indriya Grama. And he's highly qualified. I think much more qualified than any of us, isn't it? I mean, we're just so proud, you know, we Westerners, born in nice Malacha, Yavana, whatever you may call families. You know, I'm intelligent. I have Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhoma, Bhakti Prema. It's funny. So, but he, you know, he was extremely intelligent. It's a different age. I mean, he was a brilliant guy. And Menaka comes and then That's it. Forget it. Another time, of course, he's contemplating how he's the controller, and a bird passes a stool on his head. You know, just some bird. It's happened to me before too. One time I was in Govardhan, and I was passing under a tree, and I felt a little tingling on me. And it was a monkey. It wasn't a bird. And so, of course, I got angry. So he succumbs to anger. So jayato visha punsam sangos teshu pajayate. So one has to really just be extremely careful, not because if one's proud, one can think that they can do anything and not succumb to either subtle or gross attraction for either sense objects or for, you know, this concepts of oneself that are actually not real, like being the controller, being whatever, like our friend Keshi here. So jayata visham pumsam sangos teshu pajayate. So the when detachment arises, sangat sanjayate kama, then thinking, feeling, willing, right? Like if I mention in class your favorite food right now, like whatever your favorite food is, and I start to talk about it, let's say it's bagels or something, talk about it and then talk about how nice it is and everything like that. You start to contemplate, and then you think about it, thinking, feeling, and you, like the Pavlovian dogs, you start to salivate. And then, guess what I'm going to do after class? You know, you're trying to concentrate on class, but actually you're thinking about bagels instead of Bhagavatam. And then you do it. And there's not, of course, that's not sinful. But one has to be really careful. Sangos teshpajai, sangat sanjayate kama. When it reaches the stage of thinking, feeling, willing, then you really can't restrain yourself at that point. So you got to start it at the beginning. You know, just like pull the senses back, you know. All right, I meant to control the senses. And of course, this can be done when one functions on the intelligence platform. Intelligence means that one has some longer term objective in life. The mind is mostly focused on the shorter term objectives, thinking, feeling, and willing. But the intelligence, not always, but the intelligence is focused on, you know, what do I want to do? What is my goal? What is my purpose in life? And then based upon that intelligence, one can restrain or pull back the senses or not contemplate sense objects, and then ultimately engage the senses in Krishna consciousness. So that's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita that I just quoted. Actually, I should complete the verse. Sagat sanjayate kama kama krodha vijaya krodha bhavati samoha. Then one gets bewildered. Samo smriti vid brahmaha. So smriti brahmashad nashtaburi nashtaburi vinashati. And then one just loses his whole objective or focus or goal or value in life. Here's another verse. I mean, there's so many interesting verses. Oh, actually, this is from the purport. So, if we're able to be free from anger, those who are free from anger and all material desires are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation and the supreme in the near future. So it's really important. And Prabhupada here says in the purport to 16, somewhere in the 16th chapter, akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust. So one who is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. And that's actually from the purport. Let's see if there's another verse that I wanted to read here. Just finally, another verse from the 16th chapter. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance, these qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, or son of Prita. So basically, one shouldn't think that they're immune from this. I mentioned Vishwamitra Muni. I wanted to mention another example too. Let's take even the great sage Vishishta, who was, actually is a great devotee too. And so Vishishta Muni, this is a story from the Bhagavatam. Once upon a time, Vishishta Muni had a disciple. His name was Maharaj Nimi. And Maharaj Nimi wanted to do a sacrifice, some devotional sacrifice. And Vishishta Muni, he wanted his disciples to wait because he had another sacrifice, and his sacrifice was in the heavenly planets, and his sacrifice was probably going to pay a lot more dakshin than the sacrifice on the earth planet. So, there's the contemplation, several ways. He's contemplating the dakshin. It was actually interesting, contemplating the dakshin. So he's contemplating the dakshin, considering himself, also contemplating his position as a great guru. Now, I don't want to criticize him, but basically this is what was happening. So he goes up to the heavenly planets. Maharaj Nimi, he is thinking, what? Durlabha manasa janma tadap dhruvam arthadam. And of course that's from Prahlad Maharaj, but he wasn't thinking that particular verse. But he was thinking, this human birth is very rare. One shouldn't waste one moment of the human life. You can't buy back one moment. If you are frivolous and you do something that has no redeeming value to it, you can't even buy it back for probably millions of dollars. So anyway, so he was thinking like that. And so he said, let me go ahead and do the sacrifice. I mean, who's going to get angry because a devotee did a sacrifice when his guru wasn't there? I mean, I wouldn't, certainly I wouldn't get angry if a disciple did a sacrifice when I wasn't there. I'm happy if they do it when I'm not there. So anyway, I'd rather read Bhagavatam. So anyway, so he does the sacrifice, and sort of toward the end of the sacrifice. So his guru comes back, and his guru gets angry. I'm the guru, you're supposed to listen to me. He's thinking, I'm the controller again. There's also a contemplating thing, thinking you're the controller. So the guru gets angry, Vishishta gets angry, so angry with the disciple, he curses the disciple to die. The guru is supposed to be, well-wisher, all those other things. The best friend of the living of the disciple. He says to the disciple, you should be near deha. You should be without a body. And the disciple says, thank you, Guru Maharaj. He says, you should be near deha too. There's an exchange, loving exchange between the disciple and the guru. You should also be Dai Guru Maharaj. So Nimi was so powerful that even his curse to his guru took effect and the guru died. So one has to be very careful dealing with disciples. So you don't know who you're dealing with. So anyway, so they both died. And of course, later on, Vishishta appears through the Semana Mitra and Varuna. That's a different story. And King Nimi, his body was preserved by the sages, because they haven't finished the sacrifice at this particular point. The sages finished the sacrifice, and the demigods come down and say, what benediction do you want? They said, let King Nimi come back to life. And basically, they brought him back to life. I guess he was preserved in some vat of oil. And he came back, and he said, I don't want to be back to life. I was back to Godhead. And so they let him go back to God, back to home, back to Godhead. And they later on were able to genetically engineer things so that they were able to have a son from his body, cloning or something like that. That's called churning, mighty. Therefore, King Nemi, the sons of King Nemi were known as the dynasty of Janaka after that point. Janaka 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and eventually you get the Janaka, who was the father of Sita Devi. So however, anger is sometimes appropriate. Like when Krishna is killing the demons, of course, that's completely appropriate for Krishna to get angry at the demons. And actually his anger is not because of frustration, because he's contemplating sense objects. His anger is out of compassion. Well, recently we've been reading in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu getting angry at Venkatabhata. It's an interesting story. Venkatabhata was, he's the head of the Balabhacharya Sampradaya. Actually comes from Lord Shiva, Rudra Sampradaya. I was just doing some research on that yesterday because we're dealing with that in class. Tonight's class, I'm going to actually talk about the whole history of Balabhacharya or Balabhata. So he approaches Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Previously in Varanasi, he had a very good relationship with Lord Chaitanya, but at this particular point, he's developed this pride. You know, a lot of pride. And he comes to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya, he's praising Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Lord Chaitanya understands that even his praise of Lord Chaitanya is a display, a prideful display of his erudition and realization. That's interesting, isn't it? You know, one may have a lot of realization, and be displaying it publicly or to another person because one's prideful of one's realization. Actually, it says generally you should hide your worshipable deity, you know, hide your beads too. Hide your worshipable deity. It should be something that's really secret. You know, let's say if I had realized something, which I haven't realized anything, but if I had realized that my nature in the spiritual world and I talked about it, that would be prideful. Or if I had felt some symptoms of ecstasy and in the morning was crying before the deities, you know, I'd be showing off. Of course, I don't have any symptoms of ecstasy, but anyway, I just have mundane symptoms. But I'd be showing off something that, you know, that may be there, but then I would lose it, isn't it? Because I'd be prideful of something. Krishna says, Yashaham anugranami harishe tadnanam shanai. Of course, sometimes we take that verse as indicating that, you know, someone has a lot of wealth or something, Krishna takes it away, and then one is left penniless, and one's friends and relatives reject him. That's generally the translation. But also, if one is proud of something, then Krishna may just like take it away, and then one is just left with chanting Krishna's holy names, like that. So anyway, so getting back to the story, Balabhata. So Balabhata, he was proud of his realization, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a little disturbed with him, and he chastised him in a little interesting way. He started describing all the great devotees. He said, you know, Lord Chaitanya said, I don't know anything. But started describing all these great devotees that were around him, like Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Roy. He went through the whole group of devotees. And Balabhata felt like a little glowworm, you know, with all these suns and effulgent personalities around. But then still, Balabhata continued with his pride. He went to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that would you like to hear my interpretation of the holy name? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, get away, basically get away. He said, I don't know anything about the holy name. All I know is Krishna, Govinda, like that, Nanda Nandana. And then even Bhagavad had the gall to say to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would you like to hear my commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam? I surpassed basically the commentary of Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami, of course, is the original commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada would consult this commentary when Prabhupada was writing his Bhaktivedanta commentaries. And so then Lord Chaitanya said, anyone who does not respect the Swami means, of course, can mean a sannyasi, it can refer to Sridhar Swami, in this particular case, it can also refer to husband. Anyone who does not respect the Swami is a prostitute. So, so Lord Chaitanya was angry with him. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also exhibited a little anger, of course this was for a different purpose, towards Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, who was continually associating with Ballabhabhata. It's not that Gadadhar Pandit Goswami wanted to do that, but Gadadhar Pandit Goswami was such, let's say, a submissive nature that Ballabhabhata pushed himself on him and read his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam to Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. So Lord Chaitanya was like feigning anger towards Gadadhar Pandit Goswami to test Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. In other words, his anger at that point, his feigning anger, was to test Gadadhar Pandit Goswami to see if Gadadhar Pandit Goswami would say something. But Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, in the mood of Srimati Rukmini Devi, it's interesting, it's interesting Gadadhar Pandit Goswami is considered to be an incarnation of Radharani, or appearance of Radharani, but actually the Acharyas describe that Radharani with the bomb, or the left-handed mood taken by Lord Chaitanya instead. So Lord Chaitanya exhibited that left-handed mood. So anyway, so that's why we've been reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in other words, Lord Chaitanya sometimes exhibited appropriate anger for the purpose of rectifying someone, for the purpose, and Prabhupada did that too. There was this one, I think his name was Vishal, he would sometimes, every time Prabhupada would come out of the temple in Vrindavan, he would say, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada was looking around and seeing that things were not so clean. Prabhupada said, do something practical. So there was some anger there, but the anger was not due to frustration, false ego, pride, contemplating sense objects, wanting something. It was due to absolute compassion and care and Krishna's pleasure. So a devotee can exhibit anger like that, but we have to be very, very careful to not consider our anger to be spiritual when there's some tinge of false pride, tinge of attachment, tinge of attachment to our position. So, we really have to be introspective and be very careful about being angry. Of course, we can get angry when someone's blaspheming Krishna, when someone is blaspheming the devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is appropriate, but still we have to be really, really, really careful, because oftentimes our anger is a manifestation of different attachments. So, any questions or comments? You got 1.5 minutes left. Yes?
In the next verse, one of the commentaries actually says Krishna became angry because when he was angry at Kechi because he was disturbing the
Devotees.
devotees'
Right.
So that's a form of compassion, but a little different. It's sort of like Pritranaya Sadhanam Vinaya.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, that's appropriate. And out of compassion, because his killing of the demon is actually compassionate too. The question is raised that actually before the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, why is Krishna not equal to everybody? But he is equal because his anger, his killing is actually a compassionate act. It's not like he hates. Our anger is, we put labels on people that cause us to hate people. He's a rascal, he's a demon. And we hate them because of that label. But Krishna's not putting labels on it so much. He's acting out of love, even when apparently it would look externally to be, if it happened in my case, it would be like animosity. It's not really animosity in the same way. He's protecting the devotees, and also, samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti napriyaha. As Krishna says in the Gita, that no one is especially my friend, and no one is especially my... Oh my God. It's a shofar, isn't it? It reminds me of my childhood. And what is it? And the walls came tumbling down? Not, hopefully not. Jai, Shri Shri Radhagolokananda ki jai. Stasis.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Bhagom Vidamaniya Vishishta Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Kriya Vriti Manti Vasyan Vipan Kayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govinda
Jai Radhagolokananda.
Tamaham Bhajami Govinda Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham.
Jako, Jako, Gorjana Chandra Yamaya Pisachira Jiva Panya say Samsara Vitale Mulia Rukile to me a picture I do Avatara Ami Pina Manuaraga Kaya Cheto Mara Shoni Maya Nachi Baruna Gigi Hatina Mama Mantra Aku Tumimage Gateve no the problem Charane Poria Zayarinam Mantra Noila Makea Go, Rajana Pole. Kotanendra Gao, Maya, Isachira Kole. Radhana Shiva Sati Kormata Vrindana Sri Krishna Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Gatada Siva Sade Kormata Krishna Sri Advaita Gatada Siva Sade Kormata Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramahansa also Tada Satashi Shivad His Divine Grace Savaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidweta Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturanam Ki Jai Jagadada Sami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Haribol, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Stay Saswati Vaneva Ceases in your body Pascha the days returning. Lord, Gaura Chandra is calling, wake up sleeping soul, wake up sleeping soul. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? You've forgotten the way of devotional service and are lost in the cycle of birth and death. You have ascended just to save you. I am your only true friend. Other than me, what friend do you have? I have brought the medicine that will wipe out the disease of illusion from which you suffer. Take this great chance for deliverance, Mahamantra, the names of Hari. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, falling at the Lord's lotus feet, take shelter of the Harinam mantra, the Lord's holy name. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Okay, Shikshastika. Jarpanamarjanam Papamahadvagni Nirvapanam Jaya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Pratipadam Pranamritaspadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktish Tatrapi Tani Mata Smarane Nakala Etadrashi Tavakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Duradaya Vani Shani Minana